Hi everybody, I'm 2 months into my experiences with the Thrustmaster eSwap Pro controller for Xbox, which the kind people at Thrustmaster sent me, and I wanted to do a quick video. Now this isn't the full review because I still feel like I'm just scratching the surfaces of what this controller is capable of, but I wanted to share what my feelings are so far. I haven't really, used any of the swapping stuff. I haven't even really been using the buttons underneath to be able to jump and aim and jump around corners at the same time. But this has become my main controller of choice, obviously for the Xbox, and also I plug it into my PC as well if I'm going to be doing some game streaming from the Xbox streaming app, or if I'm going to be playing a PC game that supports a controller. Because I have to say that I was skeptical at first. When I first got sent it, because these are very expensive pieces of kit. It was like, well, how much better can this be? How much better can it be than the Xbox controller, or a PlayStation DualShock, or even something like the Stadia controller? And the answer is, when you first start using it, you don't feel that much of a difference. I think the reason for that is because your thumbs and your fingers and your responses aren't fine-tuned enough to understand the differences of what this sort of controller gives you, until you go back to using an OG Xbox controller or an OG PlayStation or something like the Stadia. Now remember that the Thrustmaster is a wired only controller. This is not a wireless controller. So one of the first things it does is it decreases your lag or increases your response time. Make your response time faster by millisecond, fractions of a second, which you probably don't notice at first, because these controllers use kind of a Bluetooth type connection, don't they, to connect to your console. Where this doesn't. This is wired only. And things like, the fact that these buttons are more like mouse click buttons, so they respond very, very quickly. The way that you can set your trigger stops, so that, for example, when you're firing, you don't have to pull the trigger all the way, you can just pull it a tiny amount. The fact that the sticks are incredibly sensitive and feel so smooth. Again, when you first start using it, they don't feel that much difference to the OG ones. However, when you go back to an OG controller after using the Thrustmaster for, in my case, a couple of months, you're like, I understand now. I understand why this is so much more expensive. I understand why these sticks feel so smooth and responsive, and I can kind of feel the difference now with the Xbox sticks and the PlayStation sticks, and definitely the Google Stadia sticks. So the more I'm using the Thrustmaster, the more I'm appreciating the build quality and what it delivers, especially in shooters and anything where you need fine stick control and very fast button responses. So the more I use the Thrustmaster, the more I am impressed with what it can deliver. Now, the next kind of stage in my development, I guess, of using the Thrustmaster is starting to really use the under buttons here, which you can map. So that you can do things like, as you normally use these for jumping. So when you jump in the air, you can still be moving the stick there to aim. I tell you what, the button I use the most is I use the volume buttons a lot. For turning the volume on, because my headset doesn't have volume controls on it. And then it also can do other things, like you can change the button mapping on the fly. And in my previous video, which I'll link to in the description below this one, obviously you can use the Xbox app to fine-tune the controller even more. So there we go, 2 months in, I am even more impressed with what Thrustmaster offers, and I'm starting to appreciate the amazing build quality of this controller. And when you think about, a new one of these is like 50 quid, isn't it? I dread to think how much a new PlayStation 5 controller is. They're not cheap, are they? And all of a sudden, the Thrustmaster, starts to become starts to make sense economically. Now, I have dropped this loads of times as well. and it's still, because the problem with having a wire is you kick it, don't you, and you drag it by mistake, and it smashes it onto the floor, but it's still doing well, and I haven't noticed any problems with it. So yeah, so bravo Thrustmaster, looking forward to using it for another couple of months, and when I've really started to use those extra features of the buttons underneath and the mapping, I will do another kind of final review of what I think. But overall, you know, I'm loving this so far. Have you got one? What do you think? Put your questions and comments down below, and I will see you again soon.